Chapter 5. The Voice. Monday morning. "Oh my goodness, what happened to you?" Reuben scratched the back of his head sheepishly. His left arm, still in a cast, stood out obviously. The bruise on his cheek was still prominent, and the bandage that had been taken off his head showed a very clear, very tender-looking graze that had started to scab over. Reuben began awkwardly. Fell over. Fell over? Lorelei cried out dramatically, scanning the rest of his body, seemingly looking for other injuries. She poked his left shoulder. "Ow!" Reuben protested. "What have you been getting up to? It wasn't that long ago I saw you last. Did you fall out of a train or something?" "I told you I'm fine," Reuben argued. "I just fell." "Don't be ridiculous," Lorelei said, puffing herself up. She leant forward, her ginger hair falling down over her shoulders. "Do you take me for some kind of idiot? And don't answer that," she added hastily. Reuben grinned silently at her, but kept his lips sealed. They were at college now, and having only seen them briefly over the weekend, Lorelei sought them out immediately, hunting them down like a sort of heat-seeking sledgehammer to the face, her radar eyes scanning the heads of the crowd. She found them the second they arrived on the grounds. "Leave him be," Lucas said to her. "He's absolutely fine. He doesn't look fine to me," Lorelei said accusingly, turning her attention onto Lucas. "And why are you walking funny?" She poked his stomach, causing Lucas to wince. "You're wearing a bandage?" she said, speaking to his stomach, and reaching a finger towards him to poke him again. "Don't touch me," Lucas hissed angrily, slapping her hand away. "You guys are hiding something from me," Lorelei whined, placing her hands on her hips. "Mind your own business," Lucas growled. She turned away from him, pouting. "Always the same short temper," she sighed absent-mindedly. "You never change, do you, Lucas?" Reuben frowned in amusement at the two of them. He always found their interactions most amusing. "Anyway," Lorelei continued, brushing off her worry, "where's Drake, anyway?" "He should be in a bit later," Reuben told her. "He doesn't have an early class today. He should be on the way back from his girlfriend's by now." "Oh, I forgot he's coming home a bit later this time," Lorelei said. "Probably because she was seeing you in hospital," she said, pointing a finger in Reuben's face. "Why didn't you tell me? You know I would have come to see you at the drop of a hat." "How did you know I was in hospital?" "Duh. They give you casts there? Where else could you get your arm bandaged up, you silly thing? And I know you would have told Drake. He's practically family to you. I can put two and two together." She leant forward then and ruffled his hair affectionately, like one would do to a puppy. "I didn't want you to worry," Reuben replied, voicing the first excuse that came to his mind as he leant away from her. "And besides," his expression grew mischievous as he threw her a wink, "I heard you had your time occupied by two very fine gentlemen." Lorelei went red. "Drake told us," Reuben explained. "Apparently they're both very handsome, so tell me which one will you pick?" She poked his bruised shoulder hard. "Ow! You know if you frown any harder," Lucas laughed at her, "your eyebrows will meet in the middle." She balled her fists, shoulders raised. She was positively fuming. "You're making fun of me," she whined. "Yeah, and it's so easy," Lucas teased. She turned on her heel and stormed away. Lucas watched her go with smug affection as she headed towards her class. "Good riddance," Lucas said, clapping his hands together as if dusting them off. "Hey, Lucas." Reuben said yes. "Can I ask you something?" Lucas looked to Reuben. "What is it?" "Did you find her? Rian, I mean." "No," Lucas replied, looking away. "I believe she had already gone." "Where?" "Who knows?" Lucas shrugged. "I don't think we'll be seeing her again, ever. It's a good thing, I suppose. I'd hate to find out what I'd do if I ever got my hands on her, after she—" He trailed off, glancing at his brother's cast. "We don't have class for another hour or so," Reuben said. "Why don't we go to the train station to meet Drake?" Lucas's mood seemed to lighten at this. "Are you okay to run?" Reuben asked him. "Has your wound healed yet?" "Has yours?" Lucas replied teasingly. "How about a race?" "You're on." Lucas was off in an instant, quickly being caught up by Reuben. They ran side by side towards the gates of the college, Reuben shoving his brother lightly as Lucas struggled to keep up. The two travelled through the streets, winding through back alleys and over fences and through car parks, using all the familiar and hidden paths they had grown up to love in this town they called home. Lorelei arrived at her lecture early, all her anger from talking to Lucas had faded away by the time she sat at her desk, and she waited patiently for the others to arrive. The lecture began, and as time wore on, Lorelei's attention began to waver. Her eyes slid around the room as she searched for something of more interest. It was then she noticed that Rian's desk was empty. She spared it little thought, looking ahead again and not really listening to what the lecturer was saying. There was so much on her mind recently, and it became difficult at times to concentrate on any one thing. Her mind wandered, but then someone broke her train of thought. One of the girls beside nudged her and passed her a note. Lorelei read it. Oh no, not this again. Handsome, self-absorbed and selfish David was a guy all the girls were chasing, but not Lorelei. Perhaps that was what attracted him to her. He had everything a person like him could want: well-off parents, natural good looks, and a charming and witty attitude that earned him loads of friends and tons of attention from the girls. Pompous little prick. He had been chasing her for the last few weeks now, and his confidence and unspoken belief that he was somehow better than most people was the number one thing that annoyed her most about him. She had seen him being quite unkind to several people who he felt had wronged him, a few of which were her own friends, all of whom had suffered from broken hearts because of him. She had helped them recover. After class, he tagged her down before she had a chance to escape. For the last time, the answer is no. He flashed her his most charming grin that would have set most girls swooning, and although Lorelei was suddenly consumed in a flurrying wave of annoyance, she couldn't stop herself thinking how white and perfectly shaped his teeth were. Are those real? Come on, babe, just stop playing hard to get. I'm not playing hard to get, Lorelei snapped back, and don't call me babe. She made to leave, but suddenly was held back. He had grabbed her by the wrist. Lorelei, alarmed that he had turned physical with her, swiftly returned the favour with a well-directed kick to the groin. Suffice to say, he let go of her. He fell to his knees, eyes watering. David moaned in agony, hunched over with his hands between his legs. You bitch. And so the true self comes out, Lorelei declared. I always knew you had a temper on you. She ran off before he had time to do or say anything else, not wanting to be around when he finally regained himself, which, judged by how hard she had kicked him, wouldn't be any time soon. But still, people around stopped to stand and stare. One or two offered help. Few even dared to laugh, but one figure who watched the scene unfold was not like the others. She had nothing to do with the college or even this world. Her name was Shire. A tall woman. She wore a dress of fine materials, white, with a black sash bound tightly around her waist, and a red garment that covered her shoulders. She stood and stared as a small crowd began to gather around the unfortunate boy. People who were walking away looked back over their shoulders, wondering what they had just missed. Shire watched this, standing in plain sight, yet was unseen by anyone. If anyone were to have seen her, they would have stopped and stared at her. For besides from wearing clothes that were different, her very being was different also, with skin that was almost pure white. Her lips held little colour, but the most distinguishing feature about her, besides her long jagged azure blue hair, which was tied in several knots and ponytails, were her eyes. She had the most unusual shade of burnished gold and yellow with emerald shaded edges. It was eye-catching. Her eyes would have drawn all the attention, almost making the rest of her jealous. But it wasn't the boy kneeling on the ground in agony she watched. It was Lorelei. The guardian hummed thoughtfully to herself, furrowing her brow. Two young couples passed very close to her, facing each other. They didn't notice the strange woman who stood so near. Shire unfolded her arms. Turning away from the scene, she left the grounds of the college. Casually sauntering through the streets, she headed towards the edge of the town. Every person that passed by looked through her, but she paid no attention to any of them. She met her fellow guardians, gathered beneath a bridge under a railway line that had for years been abandoned. She paused to watch the fight that was before her. Again their group had run into the creatures Lee and Krias, and again they battled. Lee screamed like a banshee, a terrible pitch so deafening that it hurt the ears to listen to. She was pinned to the floor on her side by her aberrant guardian, who struggled to hold her down. His wings flailed as he fought for balance. Lee caught the aberrant's arm as he made to swipe at her, sinking her teeth deep into his flesh. But the aberrant didn't cry out. He slashed at her stomach with his free arm and was jerked to the side as Lee, still holding him by the arm, threw him off her. Beside them, the red-haired guardian battled with a creature known as Krias, who was far quicker than his companion Lee. Like an insect, he clung to the walls and scuttled along the floor. His movement was rapid and perfectly controlled. Indigo had spent much of his energy blocking, protecting himself from the barrage of attacks that seemed to be never-ending. Krias moved with relentless speed. He cackled as if mocking his opponent, screeching and laughing like a hyena. He leapt at the red-haired guardian. Flying through the air, he covered a huge distance, crashing into him and pinning him down. Shia found her way down from the tracks that ran across the bridge and to the space below where the others fought. She stood beside her daughter Siren, who had been watching from a safe distance the scene unfold. "They jumped us," Siren explained gently, voicing no worry in her tone for her companions. "They came out of nowhere." "Like hunters they stalk," Shia agreed, glancing at her daughter. Siren was a girl in her late teens, looking very much like her mother, with pale skin which was almost snow-white and lips of faded colour. Her azure hair was wavy and longer than her mother's, tied on one side of her head and reaching past her waist. Her eyes, though hidden now by the hood she wore and the fringe that grew long, were however different from her mother's. They were void of bright colour, instead were a light and misty blue. Siren clutched the orb she held tightly in her hands. It now flashed vividly, with many bright and fabulous colours. Siren lowered the hood of her black cloak, brushing back her blue fringe to see clearer. "I don't like any of this," she stated simply. Noticing Shia, the fourth guardian had returned. Lee alerted Krias with a cry. Krias stilled his anger and stopped his volley of charges immediately. Lee shook her head violently, snarling like a wolf. She turned and leapt away. Krias followed after her in great bounds. Indigo stuck his lance in the ground, snarling after them through bloodied teeth. "That's it! Run back to your masters!" he hollered. The creatures left only clouds of dust behind them as they went. "At least we did some damage." The aberrant released his grip on his weapons, using his magic to make them vanish into thin air. He turned calmly to Shia. "Did you find anything?" the aberrant culture asked her. "No," Shia replied, with a shake of the head. "The one we seek is very elusive." "She is here," Siren clarified, staring into her orb. "I can feel her." "Of course she is here," Indigo replied, moving closer to them. "She is trapped. There is nowhere for her to run. I just wish our search would not be constantly hindered by these beasts," he said, indicating the direction that Lee and Krias had fled. "So if you found nothing," Culture asked Shia, "why were you gone for so long?" "I was watching." "Ha!" Indigo laughed. "Watching? Watching what?" "Hey, she said she was watching." The aberrant smiled, as if it was some kind of an inside joke that they shared. Shia made no reaction. Instead, she changed the subject. "I think we should keep looking." "No," Indigo cut in, sweeping back his blood-red hair. "I feel like we're trying to catch a single bird from a flock by hand, and we're doing it blind." "You're proposing we give up?" Shia asked. "No," Indigo repeated. "We have her trapped now." He fell silent for a moment, before speaking again. "We need to sit and think about this, or else we would be wasting time and effort." "You have something on your mind?" the aberrant asked. "I'm thinking," Indigo replied. "Why has she lingered here? The entire time we've been chasing her, she's always moving on quickly. Why has she stayed here so long to allow herself to become trapped like this?" The other three listened silently and thought. "Why indeed?" the aberrant purred. "I feel a strong presence in this town, something I am drawn to, but I feel like I'm being pulled in different directions." Siren gasped suddenly, staring into the orb. "What is it, Siren?" her mother asked. "Is something wrong?" "I understand now," Siren said. "I understand why we've struggled so much to find her, why the others have struggled too." "Why?" "Why?" Indigo asked her slowly. Siren raised her head, a strange look upon her face. "Culture," she said to the aberrant. "You said that you felt like you were being pulled in different directions." "Yes," the guardian replied. Siren looked back down to her orb. "It's because there are two of them." "What?" Indigo gasped. Beside her, Shia tensed and Culture blinked in surprise. I can see her, Siren breathed. She is a polar opposite of the one we were originally chasing. This new one is dressed all in black. Siren saw a second figure appear in the orb, standing beside the one dressed in black. She lowered her head, her blue fringe falling over her face again. I see a guardian with her, Siren whispered. He is young and inexperienced. She narrowed her eyes, staring down in wonder. Lucas is his name.